Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Hello, medicinal ones. In today's modern culture, magical, intuitive, healing women are suppressing and ignoring calls of their bodies to fit into ways of being that don't serve them, leaving them numbing their body screams and feeling unable to embrace their magical, soulful call to live as their wildly medicinal selves. So I've created the path for those healing, intuitive, wise oracles to reconnect to their powerful medicine woman. Beginning at the end of January, we will be guiding you on the path of invoking your medicine women to reconnect with the wisdom of your body to heal and to create a soul-led life and maybe discover your own medicine. After all, like cures like, and your healing can filter out into the world. Find out more at www.nicolebarton.co.uk/medicine-woman. In today's episode, I am delighted to be freestyling on a topic that encompasses the whole path of the secret witch, i.e., how to embody and express your powerful magical energy. There are often challenges that arise as magical women begin to walk this path, and so, as I couldn't fit how to walk the whole path into one episode, I explored some of the ways we experience these challenges so that you can have the courage and vulnerability to keep walking. In this episode, I explore the difference between embodying and expressing who we are, sharing the power of seeing the witch as an energetic rather than logical and linear. I share the common challenges that come up along this path so that you can feel how normal they are, so you can keep choosing to embody and express your powerful magical energy. This episode calls you deeper into your devotion to the fullness of your soul. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the episode all about how to express and embody your powerful magical energy. And I have to say, I was laughing when I came to create the, kind of have a vision for this episode, because I literally let this episode be chosen by both my team and you guys over in the Facebook group, which is the case with every one of my personal episodes. And yeah, I really had to laugh because I got here and was like, well, this is literally me just talking about the whole journey of Secret Witch to Wild Witch in one episode. so I was like, well, what am I going to speak to here? Because this is just so huge that I could speak to anything. So I've I've done something special for it, I guess, which I'm hoping is going to help you to be able to hear that the challenges that are often faced on this path are normal, and to help you have the courage to continue to step into expressing and embodying your powerful magical energy from soul. So I'm going to speak to some of the challenges that come up. I think that feels most aligned. So really, expressing and embodying your powerful magical energy is the work. This is the path, the full path of living your wild alchemy. So yeah, I'm not going to capture everything in this episode, especially because it's not a linear journey. It would be impossible. So I'm going to come to that, but really this is the work. This episode, this how to express and embody your powerful magical energy, is the path. So the work really is about embodying and fully expressing our soul, and we do this by harnessing powerful archetypes as a mirror. again, I'm going to come to this, but firstly, I just wanted to talk a little bit to the idea of embodying versus expressing. And again, I've talked about this path not being linear. This is also not linear. It's not like first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. But so there's an overlap, because anything that is embodied can't help but be expressed. But generally, embodiment comes first. So the work that we do here at Team Secret Witch is really about helping magical women to embody an archetype, which is usually the witch, and embody their kind of way of being, so that this archetype becomes part of us. Well, it really is who we are, but this embodiment of her is really allowing us to fully express our soul. So the embodiment generally is kind of the thing that comes first. And again, it's not linear, but then we can express that into the world through our actions, words, creations, teachings. For example, in my life, I consciously express the witch in all of my work, but I also embody her everywhere in the way I live life. So I will do her rituals, her practices, the way I dress embodies her. There are lots of different ways that I embody her and express her. So that I thought would just be really useful to speak to before we dive into this a little bit more. And of course, we are really here, if you're resonating with the witch, and even if you've got some resistance to the witch, which I'm going to go into, but there is really, we are here to embody the archetype of the witch. The witch contains within her, she's a powerful story that contains within her themes of power and magic. She has wounds that have had her deny her power and magic, deny the full expression, the full embodiment of her power and magic. Because if you think back to the witch, when she was being burned at the stake for being who she really was, which was power and magic, she then had to really hide who she was. She had to hide the power and magic that she was. So this is where the secret witch came from, because the secret witch is someone who really feels those witch wounds of kind of having to hide themselves. And it's likely that they even hide that from themselves. So they may have a sense that they're powerful, but they're perhaps using their power in ways that don't feel that powerful. So for example, with me, when I was deeply in my secret witch, I had an almighty amount of power that would perhaps show up in ways that were so for example, part of my essence as a witch, as the archetype of the witch, is leader, and my power would often get distorted and show up in my leader in a way that was very much a tyrant. And I would be kind of this dictator that was like, this is how I want it done, this is how it's going to be done, and you are going to do it that way. Or the opposite end of that was like being very helpless. And so, but you can really see in the first example of my leader and the tyrant how much power there really is hidden in the witch that often can just come out really in distorted ways. And the same for her magic. So really this journey is about reclaiming that power, reclaiming that magic. These are who we are. Power and magic is who we are. It's just it usually gets distorted or hidden. So really to begin with, this is just about embodying that energetic of the witch. And again, it's not a logical step by step. So when I came to kind of the title of this episode, I was like, oh, how am I going to give them step by step how to do this? So this isn't about how to embody the witch and express the witch in a step by step, because it isn't logical, it isn't linear. This is something that is energetic. We are working with kind of really embodying the energetic of the witch, her kind of nuanced ways of, like, all her gifts, the power and the magic that she contains energetically. So this isn't a logical path. This isn't like a do this step and you're going to embody this. This is about really feeling in our bodies who the witch is, and feeling in our bodies all the places where we have been embodying the witch wound, and really allowing ourselves to go into that and to illuminate it and to liberate it, basically. So this really, to do this, to walk this path, is really about trusting. It's an invitation into trusting, stepping into the unknown, and being willing to see what can be created from there. And any desire to want a step-by-step guide to do this is really coming from a shadow need. And by a shadow need, I mean there's these pieces of us that stop us from fully embodying and expressing our soul. Anything that kind of is in the way of us being just the fullest expression, the fullest embodiment of ourselves, is really coming from shadow. And shadow is really the place that contains all the hidden aspects that stop us from being our full expression. Anything that's unconscious, usually it will be a need for either control, approval, or security. Those are the three ways that shadow often shows up. Is any fear that arises that has some kind of compelled tendency to want approval, control, or security. That is usually a really good indication of shadow being in the way. So yeah, really this is us being invited into leaning into trust, leaning into the unknown, and any kind of wanting of a step-by-step guide is also coming from shadow. So who is the witch? That would be, I mean, there's an episode on this, there's a whole episode on how to know if you're a secret witch, but just to really kind of distill, because there's so many aspects of the witch. The witch herself, as I said, is this powerful archetype. You know her story, you know the story of the witch, usually from the kind of negative stance of the witch, her kind of evil powers and all of that. But actually, the witch is this magical creatrix. She is powerful, she's medicinal, she's wild, she's wise. She is this really feminine lover, this kind of earth keeper. And yet sometimes her magical powers and gifts can work against her, leaving her feeling that who she is isn't a gift at all. And that is so far from the truth. And also our gifts are usually hidden in our wounds. So you can see that very clearly from the example of the evil witch who uses her powers to create evil in the typical stories of the witch. There's a real gift hidden in that darkness, that she has this almighty power. And when she can reclaim that power, like I said with the tyrant, for me, she's able to consciously kind of illuminate all of those shadows so that they're no longer compelling her, and consciously harness that power in a way that is an alignment for her soul. So for me, for example, that is me, instead of kind of using my power in a kind of shadowy leader tyrant way, I now have been able to reclaim that shadow, and it shows up a lot rarer than it used to. And instead I'm able to harness my power to be able to kind of use my leadership as a way to lead women, magical women, into this path in a really loving way that enables them to see the power of the witch, the power of their witch, the kind of gifts that they have. So when we harness it, when we do the shadow work, the integration, to be able to really allow our essence to express and be embodied, then our gifts become gifts for the world. So if you are a secret witch and you're thinking, yeah, that kind of sounds like me, even if you've listened to the first episode, then there's some ways that you might be able to spot your hidden gifts if you're a secret witch. So there are different aspects of the witch, as I've just mentioned: the creatrix, the medicine woman, the wild woman, the wise woman, the feminine lover, and the earth keeper. And really, the work we do on this path is to guide women through these different kind of archetypes, these different aspects of the witch. So the witch is kind of the main archetype, but there's these kind of mini aspects, I guess, of the witch. And the women that I work with, is really, I'm leading these magical women into these different aspects of the witch. So for example, we've just run Invoke Your Wild Creatrix as a Crucible, as a group program. And that was taking women deeply into the creatrix. And Medicine Woman is the next one that's coming up for January as a Crucible. I'm very much kind of guided by the archetypes that want to come through me when I run these crucibles. So the next one I've been called by is Medicine Woman, and she's really touching a part of my soul. I hadn't really realised there's quite how much Medicine Woman was like probably the biggest part of my journey, really. And it had kind of been so much a big part of my journey that it was really an unconscious competence. And yeah, so Medicine Woman is, I'm going to go into her, but she's really a magical healer. So yeah, some of the ways that these aspects of the witch archetype might show up if you are a secret witch, how you might be able to spot your hidden gifts, is I'm going to go through each one. One is she's a powerful creatrix, and this is huge. This is a huge part of the witch. She is an incredible manifester. So you may see in your own life that you are able to manifest stuff, whether it's stuff you want or stuff you don't want, because when in shadow, the creatrix also can create unconscious chaos, or simply just give her power away, thinking she doesn't create anything and doubting herself. Yet she creates her whole life, and she just needs to learn to harness her power the right way. So that is what we've been doing in Invoke Your Wild Creatrix, is really embodying and expressing the creatrix so that she can create life magically, so she can create the life that she desires. That's what we've been diving into. Medicine Woman is a powerful, magical, medicinal healer, a real kind of wise wisdom healer, healing oracle, who kind of harnesses all the medicine of her ancestors. And yet, when she's in shadow, she often creates mysterious illnesses or health obsession. And yet, in her fullest expression of her medicine, she's able to create health, and she's able to create healing. And not only that, when she's been able to harness that for herself, she becomes the medicine that the world needs. So she finds her hidden gifts in her own kind of healing and her own taking of her medicine. So this is what's coming up in January, is this kind of, usually Medicine Woman is expressed as a secret witch, as someone who maybe has mysterious illness, health issues, she's disconnected from her body. And yet when she comes to see and harness the energetic of Medicine Woman, which is the aspect of the witch that I'm talking about, in her fullest expression and embodiment of Medicine Woman, she's able to deeply heal her wounds and find that gift that she is able to offer the world. She's that medicinal gift for the world. So that's another aspect of the witch. Another aspect, again, of the witch is the wild woman. And this is a woman who desires to kind of show up unapologetically, raw, unedited, truthful. In shadow, as the secret witch, wild woman shows up as maybe the rebel or the good girl. There's usually in shadow, there's like kind of two opposite poles that we occupy. Either the rebel, who kind of is like, I'm really wild and I'm just going to rebel against everything, or the good girl who's like, no, I'm not going to be wild at all. I need to do what I need to do to be loved, for that kind of approval, shadow. And yet, again, her truth, if she learns how to speak it from the heart, will come from love, and that will activate the world. So again, Wild Woman really has a deep gift. This is an aspect of the witch that is like real truth speaker, that is going to activate the world. Another magical aspect of the witch. And again, then you've got Wise Woman. Wise Woman is an archetypal aspect of the witch that is really someone she has this amazing intuitive wisdom. And again, some of these overlap because there's a deep wisdom in Medicine Woman, but there's this, with the Wise Woman, there's just really this kind of feeling of an oracle. And when she is in shadow, she either denies and disconnects from her knowing, or she kind of gives her power to the universe, kind of bypassing the wisdom of her body. So there are, again, shadowy ways that this can express as a secret witch, but the world needs her wisdom. And again, the medicine of the world, the gift in that Wise Woman aspect is that there's just a deep wisdom so needed by the world. The next aspect of the witch, I'm hoping this is helpful. I think it feels like it's really helpful actually to break it down this way. But the next aspect of the witch is the feminine lover. And she is this kind of really powerful, loving, feminine, beautiful, sensual expression of the feminine. And when in shadow, she becomes very kind of overly masculine, overly controlling, overly kind of needing to know, a really kind of imbalanced expression of the feminine, who really is like soft, open, vulnerable. And the world, especially at the moment, really needs this kind of creative, nurturing, like open, soft, magnetic kind of feminine gifts held within this aspect of the witch. And yes, again, like really deep medicine for the world in this aspect of the witch. And you can start to see how embodying these things and expressing these into the world is a real gift. And then lastly, there's loads of aspects of the witch, but these are the kind of 6 that really stand out to me. There's the connected earth keeper. So this is a woman that is so in tune with nature's rhythms, nature's cycles. And when she's in shadow, she either ignores the calls of the wild or maybe fights to rescue it. And he's feeling like there's this real kind of, I want to say kind of this need to rescue the world from everything that's going on. And yet when she can harness her power as a connected earth keeper, she's really here to deeply serve the world into deep connection to the land and healing the land. So yeah, this is again another important aspect of the witch. And to fully embody the wild witch, I suspect you'll probably take on most of these. So all these aspects are really important to see. It's likely that you may resonate with some more than others, but the witch contains all of these. So these are the aspects of the witch that I lead magical women into. And these are all really kind of embodied and expressed parts of me. So I really resonated with the witch, and yet also had some resistance, which again I'm going to go into, as that's one of the challenges of this path. But these I've kind of walked this path, and I've had the fear, the resistance, the emotions of all the wounds of the witch that can really prevent us from actually embodying and expressing our powerful magical energy. So yeah, today I thought it'd be really good, really helpful to speak to some of those challenges and resistances to the path, so that you can feel that you're not alone in the fears that come up in walking this path, and so that you can cultivate the courage and vulnerability to keep walking it anyway, so that you can fully embody and express who your soul is calling you to be, who you came here to be. ultimately so that you can fully express and embody your powerful magical energy, which is the whole point of this episode. But I do know that there are challenges in the way, that women really feel this kind of barrier sometimes to this work. And one of the main ones, I'm going to dive into this right now, one of the main ones that comes up often is the resistance to the very idea of being a witch. And one of the common questions that comes up is like, I've real resistance to the idea of being a witch. Does that mean that it isn't for me? And my answer to that really is that it is so common to have resistance to the idea of being a witch. Again, if you think about how the witch has been presented to us in society, she's been presented as this kind of really dark, nasty figure. And really, again, like, just to say, she's presented as this horrible, like, dark figure. And if we are a witch, we also have her wounding. So her wounding is that she doesn't want to be outcast. So the idea of embodying a witch to a witch is like the most scary thing in the world. It makes so much sense that a witch with the wounding of fear of being outcast would have resistance to the idea of embodying something that has such a negative connotation in the world. And again, the way that we work with these archetypes is that they kind of activate the hidden parts of our soul or psyche that we've kept hidden. So when we begin to resonate with the stories that activate us, like the witch, it can be quite triggering. Because usually these parts of us want to stay hidden for the very reason that it keeps us safe to kind of stay hidden. So actually, if you are having resistance to the idea of being a witch, which you may do, even though you're here listening to it, you know, the fact that you're listening to it even is suggestive of the fact that you are resonating with it, but there may still be some kind of hidden, shadowy resistance that kind of, again, goes back to that idea of security, shadow. And so if you have resistance, it's actually more likely that this is the exact medicine that you need in order for you to be able to create your magical life. And I know this because I had resistance to the idea of being a witch. I wasn't sure if it was me. It felt like something I was just kind of pretending to be. And yet the more and more I have embodied her, the more I've realised she is exactly who I am. I've always been medicine woman, as I said. It was kind of like this unconscious competence. That is really a strong part of me. I am definitely a creatrix. All of the aspects of the witch, I can so clearly see that those are me. And yeah, everything is really who I am. And so the more I've walked this path, the more I have seen that, yeah, I am the witch. I am the archetypal witch. And it has helped me to fully reclaim my power, my magic, and life is just so much more magical. And that's not to say that Secret Witch doesn't come in still and try and, you know, in her shadowy way, have me create life differently. There's still work to be done. But there is so much difference. There's been so much transformation, so much like magic created in the embodiment and full expression of her. So I can really say that the more resistance you have, the likely it is that, and this is true for my clients as well. I know there were some people, especially in Invoke Your Wild creatrix as well, who had so much resistance to joining. And usually it is the more resistance you have, actually often the more transformation is available for you. So just in case you are feeling resistance, feeling fear and feeling like, oh, it can't be for me, that is really helpful to know that you are not alone in that. That is actually something that is quite typical of the journey of the witch. So if that one is stopping you from fully embodying, fully expressing, fully stepping into the journey of learning to fully expressing and embodying, then that is really helpful to have illuminated. And of course, along with that, there is this real fear often in this journey of going into the darkness. Again, I said the witch really holds this kind of dark image, this dark energy, which is so crucial to her work. Like, there are some real witch wounds. There are some real pains that the witch feels. So, for example, some of the ways that the secret witch will feel that are quite dark is the feelings of shame, the feelings of vulnerability, the feelings of self-doubt, of mistrust, of unworthiness, kind of unlovability. And this, again, I mentioned earlier, the fear of being outcast by society for being your full magic. There's some real darkness in the secret witch's experience that we need to really go into the pain of how we've given away our power. And in doing so, that is how we begin to liberate ourselves. So the darkness is where we begin to be able to illuminate and reclaim our gold and our wounds. And I know in Invoke Your Wild Creatrix, so many of the participants, and again, my one-to-one clients as well, have been so scared to go into the dark. And that was also the case for me. But as they do, it's really beautiful to be able to watch them reclaiming so much love for themselves. It's really, really beautiful to witness. And again, I was very resistant to going into the darkness. And the more and more I do, the more I see that this is the only way that we can begin to reclaim our magic. But to know that the fear is part of that path is really helpful, because it helps us love that. It helps us offer love to the fear that is coming up in walking this path. That is the deeper invitation. There was an episode on tending your nervous system, tending to the fear. So that would be really useful if you are feeling called to embody and express your powerful magical energy. One of the first steps really is to begin to offer ourselves love, and to be able to tend our nervous system in amongst the fear that arises, even just in sometimes going into the journey, going a bit deeper. So yeah, I'd really recommend listening to that. Just really tending to yourself, tending and offering love. And I know sometimes that can sound like a bit of a fluffy sentence. So by that, I mean, do what you need to do to bring love to yourself by maybe stroking your body, massaging your body, letting it know it's safe, having a dialogue with the kind of scared parts of you, like where is that coming from? That's what I mean by tending and offering love, and I do go into more detail with that with the nervous system episode, so do check that out if that is unclear. Maybe I'll do a whole episode actually on tending with love. That would be quite a good idea for the collection. Yeah, and then there's another part of us talking about darkness that really can be so scared to go in the darkness that it throws out like, well, why do we need to? I remember I was very scared to kind of look there at my powerlessness and at the old stories when I was beginning my journey into Secret Witch, and I felt like I'd done it so many times with psychotherapists, with cognitive behavioural therapists, and I'd kind of very much been embedded in a path called the 3 principles of that I call it the Ascension path, which again, there's another episode on that. But I really had resistance because there was this idea that I wasn't broken, I didn't need fixing. And that is to some extent true, but there's always an expansion available. And so, for example, when I was beginning to go into the darkness, there was a lot of stuff around my dad leaving and the kind of unworthiness stories that I'd taken from that held me back. And I had not really seen that those stories were kind of lurking there in the shadows, unconsciously directing my life, and I was calling them fate. There's a quote by Jung which says, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will forever direct our lives, and we will call it fate. And that's really what was going on here. Was never before had I looked at how my life was being unconsciously created by the wounding that I'd pushed into the darkness. So usually psychotherapy and cognitive behavioural therapy and all the other steps that I'd taken had kind of really just had me talking around what had happened. And there's a benefit to that if that is what you need. And yet, for me, I had done that. I'd been and kind of talked about it all, expressed it all. But now there was this need for being able to kind of love it back to wholeness. And so the reason why we go into the darkness on this path, and the reason why is really a big reason, this is probably one of the most important parts of this path, is that any of the previous work I had done, whether that be self-help, kind of therapy, or even like the path of ascension, so spirituality, which has us kind of evade the body, kind of lacked the real shadow integration that's available on this path. And by that I mean kind of really fully seeing and illuminating all the ways that we are unconsciously creating life, and all the stuff that we've pushed into the shadows, in order to love them back to wholeness, so that they no longer direct our lives. These wounds really don't have any kind of way of choosing anymore. And this is why there's this kind of need for leaning in, seeing the darkness, loving it and tending it, and still choosing, despite the fear, to keep walking the path of soul, because that is ultimately where the transformation occurs. And yeah, I hadn't really seen that before. I hadn't really seen the power of this kind of shadow integration. I'd not looked at how my life was being unconsciously created by the wounding that I'd pushed into the dark, never to be seen again. I just kind of denied it and suppressed it. And each time I was coming to make a choice in life, this shadow, this darkness, this stuff that I'd pushed into the darkness was just coming back each time I made a choice. So for example, do I lead my business? There was like this very, very much this story of like, no, I don't need to. I can just sit here and do nothing. Because, you know, I've seen this path of ascension, there's nothing to do, we're just spirit, kind of life is just happening for us. That was a real shadow of me not feeling capable. Like there was an old story hidden in there of like, I wasn't able to lead, and it manifested as, you know, this kind of real passion for the ascension path, and thinking that I didn't need to do anything because, you know, the universe was in charge. And that kept me hidden for so long as a secret witch. And so really now powerfully seeing that this was really coming from a shadowy belief that I wasn't capable, and had me create the idea that I didn't need to do anything. And that kept me hidden. So now I've shown up, I've seen this shadow, I've integrated it, and I'm leading my life and leading women into their magic. And the same again with kind of creating relationships for me. Ideas of not being worthy, or of like the idea that being my truth was not possible. And even like the idea that I needed to be financially secure kept me stuck in a marriage that I didn't want. And these things were all hiding in the darkness, and by being able to just see them, by going into the darkness and embodying and expressing my new stories, choosing out of the old stories, choosing into the new stories, and there is a whole load of work in embodying and expressing there. That means that I'm no longer navigating life unconsciously, but I'm consciously choosing all of life. And this is really the activating power of the witch. But we do need to go into the darkness in order to be able to walk that path. Yeah, so what else do I want to tell you? There's often actually something that arises along this journey, a question about not feeling ready. Like if people can see the power of going into the darkness, it's like, oh, I'm not ready for being triggered. This is, my nervous system's already activated enough with fear. And yet I'm kind of called to this. I'm like, there's a deep calling somewhere in my body to this. Maybe not always even noticed in the body. But the question is like, is it for me? Because I'm already activated. My nervous system's on fire. And yeah, really, again, this path of embodying your witch queen is another way that I describe the wild witch. which is really the secret witch is really someone who doesn't know her power. The wild witch or the queen witch is someone who has has embodied her power. So that is the journey really, from not knowing your power and magic to fully embodying your power and magic. But this whole path is intentionally designed to guide you through healing. And I share as much as I possibly can on that in this podcast and in the crucibles that I run and in my one-to-one work. So there are various ways that you can access this, but the whole path is intentionally designed to guide you through healing. And ultimately, the biggest point here is that one of the most important underlying foundational principles of this path is love. And there's a quote by Crowley which says, love is the law, love under will. And that is kind of a fundamental part of this path, is knowing that everything that we do in the path to soul is underlying it is love. And so in this path, I'm leading people into learning to lovingly tend to their wounds. And again, we talked a little bit about that. There's the nervous system episode that I already mentioned. But yeah, really, I'm leading people into being able to tend their wounds with love until you know that deeply in your bones, all is welcome. Every single part of you is welcome. And that is what I mean by loving ourselves back into fullness. Until you know that every single part of you, all your witchiness is welcome, then I'm going to be here to love you through the journey. And the whole point of this is that your nervous system will learn that someone with power, aka you, has shown up with the loving tending that it's been longing for your whole life. And yeah, so feeling not ready for being triggered is even more of a call to this path than anything is that we need to learn to bring love to all of us. And the more we do, the more our nervous system can relax. And I have to say, I didn't quite see it like that. So if you're like, yeah, I'm not really sure how that works. When I was first in this path and I was feeling triggered, I really didn't see those triggers as material for liberation initially. But now, as I've come to learn to love myself and to illuminate and kind of see everything with love, I've been able to really become fully conscious, fully reclaiming my power by loving all of me. And I still get triggered, but it doesn't stop me from fully expressing and embodying my soul. So I still choose into it. And now I very much see those triggers as material for liberation. They are the things that get sent to us to liberate all the places where we are not bringing enough love. So if you're feeling that your nervous system is on edge and it's feeling edgy to lean into the journey, then know that this is really even more of a call into this path, because this path is all about love. And I have so many examples of material for liberation that I could share. But perhaps a simple one from this week is that my washing machine broke, and my nervous system went straight into, oh my God, how am I going to sort this? I'm going to need a new washing machine. That's threatening my financial security. And I was really able to feel like, oh, bless those parts of me that feel that fear. And I kind of went deeply into my body, into the kind of darkness there of the sensation of the tension, and really began to love it back and hold that tension, hold that sensation, and not act from this kind of compelled fear that I needed to get someone in immediately and, and risk the kind of paying someone to look at it as well as having it fixed. And I held out and was able to find someone who was able to come and just have a look at it without a charge. And in the end, he ended up just fixing it. So I didn't need a new washing machine, and my nervous system just didn't need to go into that fear. That's a simple example of how just simply bringing love to the innocent parts of us that kind of create life in a way of fear is really, really powerful to help us be able to actually go, what do I want to create here? And I wanted to create the fact that my washing machine would just be fixed really simply, and it was. So holding that tension and sensation and tending the nervous system with love was really a powerful practice of this work. So it's a really simple example of how this can have an impact and how this can create transformation, how we can return to our power and create magic. Now, one of the questions that comes up quite a lot is usually because a lot of people walking this path have often walked some form of ascension path prior, and it's not a necessity if you haven't, but often people have. So by ascension, I'm talking about some sort of spiritual path that really takes us out of our bodies. It's almost like we want to evade the body, we want to return to source, we want to evade the ego and all of this stuff, and really kind of, see that there's this higher power, this kind of natural intelligence of life is the way that I like to describe it. And I'd very much walked that path. That was actually the path that I taught prior to the kind of work that I do now. And in that path, there's this kind of idea that we don't need to do anything. And actually I do have to laugh, because that used to be my tagline. There's nothing to do was kind of like my tagline, like and now I very much see that there is stuff to do if we actually want to create something. And so it's kind of really funny how it's kind of come full circle, and I now see it as almost like this co-creation, this juicy co-creation between soul and spirit. So this work that I'm sharing now is all about the path of soul. And often there are ritual work, there's practices, there's embodiment practices, and we very much need to be in our bodies. So there's almost this descent that we go through in this path that has us come back to earth. And there can be quite a lot of resistance to this, because it's almost like what I'm saying is, no, that's wrong. We need to now walk in this direction. So that's not what I'm saying at all. There's like this glorious, juicy co-creation between the ascension and descension paths. That is how we create magical lives. And so often one of the questions I get is, I really love this program. I really love this path, and I'm really called to walking it and embodying my powerful magic, but I'm used to a spiritual path which says that we don't need to do anything, and there are a lot of practices and rituals and ceremony work, etc., and like, is that a requirement? And as I said, often my clients have come from a spiritual ascension path before they arrive here at the descent. And that makes perfect sense, because again, often my clients are walking the path that I've walked, and I have walked a spiritual path in my work with the 3 principles, and it was so helpful. There was so much amazing stuff to be seen there. Just knowing that we are part of the natural intelligence of life was so profound to me. It shifted so much, and yet I now see that the next breadcrumb along that path is the descent to soul. So we are here to co-create between spirit, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. There's lots of different words, love, nature. We're here to co-create between that, the natural intelligence, and soul. And that means we're here to create magic here on earth in our bodies. And that is really the only place where magic can be fully experienced. So it makes sense that if we want to live full, magical, powerful lives, that we have to go back into the body. This work and this path is that of embodiment. And so in order to fully get into our bodies, we need to do the work of magical practice, of ritual, of just really connecting back to our bodies, because often in the path of ascension we have really evaded the body. And I know that was true for me. Particularly my journey was, I guess really the shifting point for me was when I got pregnant. And I'd seen amazingly how this, this natural intelligence of life had been weaving its way through me, but somehow I really had also evaded the body. I had a lot of fear. If you think about the power required and the magic required in giving birth, these wounds were really I was catapulted into this portal of transformation because I was so scared. I was terrified at my lack of power to be able to give birth, and just felt like I was not capable. And I gave birth, but it was totally not the medicine woman experience that I'd hoped for. And I can see now so clearly that I had been in such fear, in such shadow, and that had totally created my birth to be one created from fear and shadow, rather than the conscious birth that I could have had I done this work. And I soon realized the importance of the body in that, because I had been evading my body and not listening to its signals and pushing myself and forcing. Even though my whole idea was about not doing things, I had also been stuck in the idea that thought didn't matter. And when my thoughts showed me that, I need to rest, my body's important, I was dismissing that. And what happened was, as I was about to give birth, my face went completely numb and I got paralyzed by Bell's palsy. And so my facial nerve died and I couldn't move my face at all. I couldn't blink. I couldn't shut my eye. It looked like I had had a stroke. And there was just such a lesson in that for me, because I was also told that it wouldn't heal. And I have been able, by going into the body, to really, really deeply heal that. And I was told, and this is where the power came in, I really had to hold a vision for what I wanted to create, for the story that I wanted to embody and express, was that I wanted to heal my face. I was absolutely mortified, terrified of the fact that my face wouldn't heal. And I would say now it's perhaps 95% healed. And there's still some work to do. I'm still feeling into that deep medicinal woman archetype of healing that last 5%. And I know that it will heal. And I'm using all the tools that I have to heal that. But it really did take the descent for me to fully remember and know that truly. And so, really fully embodying, expressing my medicine woman here has been such a powerful, powerful thing for me, and such a crucial aspect of the witch to embody and express in deep healing and deep transformation and deep magic and deep power. All of this has been required. And if I had kept evading the body, my body was giving me a sign that I needed to come back into the body, because it was saying, okay, you don't want to listen to me? Fine, I'll go numb. That is really what was going on. We can only suppress and avoid the body for so long before it throws out symptoms for us to address. And that is what happens. So I fully know that this path is really just the next place to go after walking the ascension path. So that was all. If you were having that question around, I've walked the ascension path, I don't quite understand why, if it's all just thought, do we need to start doing things? That is very much my experience. That is very much why we do. This is the next path. This embodiment is the next part of the path in creating paramagic. If that is what you want to do, again, magic can only be experienced and created here in a body. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anywhere to express and embody it. So that's my really powerful learning from that experience. Of course, the next part is that there's this it feels so unknown. I'm really nervous to go there. How can I get over the fear of walking this path? And this is so common. This is, again, so welcome along this journey. The path of soul isn't easy, and it's also not for everyone. But if it's calling you, you're likely going to be activated in ways that you've not felt before. you might begin to notice synchronicities calling to you, signs, like anything that kind of knowing, and knowing that this is for you. And again, there's this real deep shadowy need within us all to often, especially in the witch, to kind of know the path, to know what is happening, to know how that we're going to create this. And the only way to really overcome this is to offer yourself as much love. It comes back to that loving tending to the parts of you, the shadowy parts of you that want to know the way. And yeah, again, like I had some magical synchronicities when I was being called to embody the witch. In fact, I had said to my coach, I think I've shared this story before, but I said to my coach, I got this deep sense I'm a witch. I was burnt at the stake in a previous life. And the moment I said it, my house set on fire. And it was like I got goosebumps, and I just knew. My house was fine, by the way, but I just knew. I had the fire brigade out, and it was like, wow, I know that I'm here to do this work. This is a real sign, a real synchronicity that is guiding me onto the next kind of breadcrumb of my path. And I just knew this was for me. And there was still fear. There was still part of me that was like, well, how is this possible? But let me just say, to speak to that, if you are sensing that it's for you, you've likely spent a whole lifetime ignoring the calls of your body, ignoring the calls of your soul. And this is the chance to really listen and say, is it time for me to choose this anyway? And it's not about getting rid of the fear of the unknown. It's about really holding ourselves through that, which is coming back to the loving tending. So it'll keep calling you until you answer. So it's kind of inevitable. So really the deeper question here is, can you offer yourself the love that you need to choose it anyway? And that is what I did. That is what the deeper invitation is for you here. And yeah, it's really not about knowing how. And that's another thing that comes up quite often for my clients, all of my clients, whether one-to-one, whether in the crucibles that I run. This work is really about learning to create our lives powerfully and magically. And that involves being able to hold a vision. And this isn't a vision that needs to be realistic or easy. The whole point of holding a vision is that it's challenging. So despite the pain that arises when visioning and knowing that we haven't got it yet, there's always this kind of liminal space between where we are now and who we want to become. That can be quite painful. So again, that usually stops us from even accessing our vision. So just knowing that this vision that we hold doesn't need to be realistic. It doesn't need to be easy. We don't need to know how. The work is then in doing the work to embody the energetic of the woman we came here to be. And in doing that and taking the aligned actions, the next step along the path, the next kind of breadcrumb following that, we slowly and surely begin to embody the fullness of our soul. And my clients usually always want to know the how. And I used to try and figure out the how, and I still do at some points to try and figure out the how when it gets scary, when we get back into our shadowy fears, because that's how we're taught. We're taught that that's how life operates. And yet the deeper invitation is to hold that vision, not need to know how, and trust, not just sit and trust, because that's kind of almost going back to the ascension. It's sitting and trusting and knowing to follow the next aligned action, the next breadcrumb that appears in front of us. And in doing so, I can almost guarantee that every single woman walking this path will feel fear. And this fear is really an alchemical part of the healing available in this path. And allowing yourself to learn to love yourself, again, as I've said, has a healing magic of its own. So there's so much fear, whether it's fear of being seen, fear of being in our power, fear of being our magic. It can be really scary to step into that. And often that's why we create life the way we do, especially as secret witches. We often create this sabotage that stops us from fully being who we want to be. So for example, for me, when I'm about to lead something, I'll often create illness, because it's my medicine woman's pattern. You know, she's like, oh no, quick, let's create some illness so you don't have to be in your power. And for example, this happened recently in my Manifesting with the Moon event, which is a free event I run monthly. If you fancy joining us, then there are free tickets. But I had for some time been very embedded in my perfectionist shadow of kind of having a script for them, and I illuminated that and decided that was something to liberate. So I ditched the script, and the moment I ditched the script, I was really, really ill for the event. And the choice was, do I cancel because there's this illness that I've created, or do I continue and lead it and kind of face that fear? And I chose consciously, after illuminating all the shadowy ways that this was having me, you know, I was sabotaging myself, using my power against myself, it made sense to me that I didn't cancel. I knew that I'd created it that way from fear. So I took some steps to get some support from my team member, from my connection creatrix, Michelle. She read some of the poems, she led people into the sharing, and she really supported me in that. So again, it was almost even a better experience of learning to accept and receive love and support. So yeah, it really is, fear can show up in really sneaky ways, and it's being able to love all of the ways that fear shows up and choose consciously again. And you can go as gently and as slowly as you want with that. You can go as gently as you need to in this journey. But the key piece, really, that holds it all together, and this is the deeper invitation to you here, is that of devotion. And devotion for me feels to be, even though you don't know the how, even though, you know, there's all of this fear, is that we just continue to devote ourselves to living from soul, that we choose to devote ourselves to our heart's desires, and we choose to keep walking, to keep taking the next aligned action that appears, to follow the next breadcrumb, in order to embody and express our soul's vision, in order to embody and express our powerful magical energy. And yeah, that devotion is really the only thing that will have you be able to embody and express your powerful magical energy. So it comes back to devotion. So really, this is about choosing to keep going despite whatever's arising, and loving yourself through that process. So that is always, in fact, that feels a good place to end. We're just at an hour. So that feels like a really powerful place, is that piece about devotion. Like, this is your choice. You know, whether you make the choice consciously or unconsciously, it is always your choice. It's always your decision. And often it can look like it's not our choice. And usually when it does, that is a great sign that we're in victim, that we are not making a conscious choice. And we're giving away our power. We're having ourselves create something that isn't really, it's not what we want. So yeah, devotion is the key here to all of it. And there's some inquiry I want to leave you with, that will be helpful to let you illuminate more about embodying and expressing your powerful magical energy. And there's some questions here, so I'm just going to give you those, and that'll be it for today's episode. So the questions are: what are the costs and benefits of fully embodying and expressing your powerful magical energy? And it's always good to flip this question. So what are the costs and benefits of not fully embodying and expressing your powerful magical energy? Those two questions are always really, really powerful in illuminating anything that is a choice. And again, the next question is, do you choose to devote yourself to walking the path of soul, to allowing your heart to lead, despite the fear that arises? And the final question is, What is the next breadcrumb? What's the next aligned action along your path that will help you to embody and express your powerful magical energy? So be with those. Do go there with love, and just really feel into all of those answers. It's going to be so powerful. And I've loved sharing this actually. It's been really, I didn't quite know what was going to be created when I first found this topic. I was like, wow, this is the whole journey, but it feels like actually illuminating the challenges is such a powerful thing for you. So let me know what you make of it, and I will chat to you next time. Lots of love. Despite not really knowing how that episode was going to go to fit the whole journey into one, I quite loved it actually. So my favourite takeaways are: embodiment and expression are so important, and whilst it isn't a linear thing, embodiment is generally first and expression comes after. For example, we embody the witch archetype and then we're able to express her into the world. Embodying and expressing the witch's powerful magical energy is the work of this path. It's not a logical or linear path, it's the work of embodying an energetic. It's an invitation into truth. The witch has lots of aspects. She's a powerful creatrix, medicine woman, wild woman, wise woman, feminine lover, and connected earth keeper. The work is to discover and embody these different aspects that resonate with you, that call to your soul as a way of becoming who you really are. There are lots of challenges to embodying and expressing your soul's fullness, from fear, resistance, uncertainty, the unknown, unconscious shadow, material for liberation, and resistance to doing more. And I dive into these to help you choose more consciously to keep walking and devoting to the path. The path of soul isn't easy and it's not for everyone, but if you want to embody and express your power and magic, it is likely for you. It calls for your loving devotion and choice and following of the next breadcrumb. The real question is, will you keep walking? If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.